what is your opinion on the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft and how terf they are? So I'm going to answer that really quickly and talk about my issue with religious liberty as a method of disguising hate speech.
Yeah, I think that we came up with a really pithy way of rephrasing this as, where does the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft fall on the scale of strict Dianic witchcraft to the Westboro Baptist Church?
And about right smack dab in the middle on the scale of using
religious liberty to be awful people and how they do so.
So, anyway, we did pose this question to all of the different instructors, providers, and volunteers who worked with us, and we all agreed that it was reprehensible to use religious liberty to disguise a hate group. We have found that ever more egregiously during the ongoing Trump administration, religious liberty is being used as a smokescreen by various hate groups in order to condone and justify their violent discrimination towards groups that they have dehumanized and othered using pseudo-religious rhetoric and stochastic terrorism. I'm going to pause here and define stochastic terrorism.
You want me to do the high-speed nutshell?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
High-speed nutshell. Stochastic terrorism is where you stand behind a podium saying that certain groups of people aren't actually human and should be targeted with violence. Someone else goes out and kills them, and then you stand there saying, well, I didn't do anything.
I didn't have my hand on the gun. Religious groups preach anti-LGBTQIA, anti-poor, anti-Latin, and anti-Black sentiments, and that's just like also anti-Muslim, anti-other religious groups. We could go on. Sentiments that get people killed and then disavow all responsibility. And now the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft is using the language of
some of the language, really.
White, second wave, feminist, pseudo-paganism in order to disguise their anti-trans, faux feminist.
Okay, so they're basically using Marion Zimmer Bradley pagan language.
Oh, well put. Yes. It's hate speech, and it's being praised by people who see lesbian witch church and don't actually do a modicum of research into what they're praising. The Internal Revenue Service has declared that the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft is officially a church and granted it, now this is special, the IRS's coveted Church 170B1A status.
Basically what that translates to is they're on the national list of charities that you can look up and see they're a nationally recognized
and they've been
church.
Declared as not having to file a 990, which is where we're hanging up, because one IRS official keeps saying that we have to,
really
and one keeps saying that we don't. Not the point. This is the same status that the Westboro Baptist Church has, and also the same status that the Church of Satan has. We are glad that the Church of Satan has it, but they specifically have it in order to use the same religious liberty laws that churches like the Westboro Baptist Church and the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft have, in order to oppose this hateful rhetoric being disguised as religious liberty, this discrimination being disguised as religious liberty.
So what it boils down to is that once you are considered a church, and the only way legal recognition that exists for churches is granted by the IRS, more on that in a second, you can say anything you want to.
Yep, and you are completely protected from being sued by employees for discrimination. And these are the same laws. That's the timer. Would you mind going and checking on things?
Yeah, let me finish very quickly with the IRS thing. I'm going to do high speed. Basically, the status that these people have is the status that says you never have to file anything again, and we're never going to look at you again. You are now legally considered a church by the only body that gets any say at all, and we're never going to look at you or review that again.
But this
That's
same
what that
ideology,
status boils down to.
This same ideology that your religion exempts you from discrimination lawsuits is being used to justify everything from medical professionals lying to their clients about whether or not a fetus is viable or a threat to the life of the person carrying the fetus, to whether or not you have to bake a cake And pretty soon we're going to start seeing it spreading towards racism and covering racism, because they're already preaching it behind podiums. Anyway, moving right along. The Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft is by no means secretive that it is a hate group that was founded on exclusionary, eugenics-based biological essentialism that is grounded in a terrible understanding of biology. It's not even like a 6th grade understanding of biology. It is the kind of biology you encounter in trans-exclusionary churches, not in any kind of legitimate scientific understanding of how biology works. Not only is the church vehemently anti-trans, it is also anti-bisexuality, anti-pansexuality, and anti any kind of healthy sexual exploration that permits the recognition that a person's sexual identity and sexuality may change or evolve over time. To be elected as a church trustee of the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft, the Articles of Incorporation say that one must have been assigned female at birth, always identified as female at birth, and present evidence of a consistent lesbian life. So any lesbian who once identified as straight or bi or pan or didn't realize they were a lesbian until later in life cannot ever be a trustee. The church also requires that trustees provide a testimony to an experience of a new birth in lesbian feminism, which honestly sounds to me like the structure of 17th century Calvinism in New England. How exactly are you supposed to prove that you've been saved? Almost done, love. I know that we have to go serve dinner. The entire church seems to exist just in order to get around existing anti-discrimination laws so they can gather and foster hatred and spread misinformation without any kind of legal repercussions, and in fact, with extensive legal protection. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court recently confirmed in Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commissions that religious liberty erases the need to recognize the fundamental humanity and equal rights of all persons, including on whether or not you'll bake a cake and whether or not you instruct all the people who support your bake shop to harass a family who asked you to bake a cake because you're a baker. Anyway, unfortunately, it is very likely that any amount of activism is going to fail. We will not be able to convince the IRS to revoke the tax-exempt status, and it's very unlikely that the church will ever be labeled a hate group. Whereas Black Lives Matter, which is explicitly not a hate group, it's literally just saying stop killing unarmed Black people, that gets labeled a hate group. And Antifa, which is literally don't be a fascist, may or may not be labeled a terrorist group. But basically, similar efforts have already been made in the fight against the virulently anti-LGBTQIA Westboro Baptist Church. In 2013, the White House responded publicly to 5 separate public petitions with signatures totaling nearly 675,000, demanding that the IRS church status for the Westboro Baptist Church be revoked. Although the White House said the Westboro Baptist Church's God Hates Fags logo and habit of protesting funerals was reprehensible, it declined to officially recognize the church as a hate group. We don't predict anything different happening with the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft, which means that it is even more so the responsibility of all witches and pagans and lesbians and actual feminists to not condone or be complicit in their message of hatred and discrimination. And in fact, stand up against it everywhere that you can. Don't sit by and let them present at Pagan Pride, for example.
So, I know that I was the one saying we need to go, so I'm going to do this again at fairly high speed. Hopefully this is intelligible. This is a case where narrative control is incredibly important. This is something that the Democratic Party has historically been terrible at.
So bad.
Certain modern portions thereof are getting better at it. But essentially, you want to be the one telling the story. You want to be the one defining what terms mean. You want to be the one getting your version of shit into public awareness. Which means if you let the Pussy Church of Modern Witchcraft say that
this is lesbian witchcraft,
they just won the narrative battle. and now you have to fight back. Whereas if you are in the space saying, this is what lesbian witchcraft looks like, it's inclusive, it's trans-friendly, it's accepting of something other than this binary paradigm, it's not this kind of awful, hateful thing.
Women for women.
Then it ends up being, then they come in and say, no, it is this thing, but you've already got your foot in the door. If you let them define the narrative, you're never going to get it back.
So start fighting it now. Oppose it now. And keep opposing it. Don't attend places where they're speaking. Talk to the heads.
Or do and ask them pointed questions afterward.
Or do and protest. You know, talk to your coven head, your temple, your circle, your grove, and say, we refuse to participate where they are welcome. You know, take a stance. Be safe, everyone.
Have a good night.